We've all talked about how the Steelers are in a rebuild, but part of the rebuild means finding strengths. Are the strengths in finding dynamic duels on this roster? We'll talk about one that's obvious on defense with the Steelers edge rushers, and one that could be developing on offense right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button of this video if you enjoyed. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content whenever we get a chance to release it. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, of course, daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all capital letters, all one word, at prizepicks.com. All right, y'all. So I wanted to dip back into some of the interviews that I was able to get down after the game on Sunday, because I thought it was really important. There were some conversations I had, couldn't fit them all into the post-game reaction show. And, I talked about dynamic duos. One duo that you knew was going to be a factor in this game as soon as the one guy was back is TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Highsmith had 3 sacks in the first game when TJ Watt played, had about 3.5 without him in the next 7 or 8 games that the Steelers played. And then the next game that he's back, he gets 2.5 sacks. So that's ridiculous for Alex Highsmith. But, there's some people out there that will try to make this like Alex Highsmith, he can only do it because of TJ Watt. And it's like, look, the whole thing with Alex Highsmith is that he's not a guy that's going to beat double teams consistently. TJ Watt has done that a lot in his career. And you saw in this game, if you watch the All-22, if you watch the film, you saw TJ Watt getting off the ball and getting chipped by a tight end or dealing with 2 offensive linemen. You saw the focus the Saints put on him. And then in turn, you saw the focus they couldn't afford to put on Alex Highsmith, which is what I think, and which I've been saying was happening in the games without TJ Watt. This is what makes them a dynamic duo. Got a chance to catch up with Highsmith after the game a little bit. Really smart guy, really a guy who's been working hard on developing his game. Just listen to how he talks about what he's been working on and what the defense can be like when TJ Watt is out there.
I was just talking about the importance of stacking days as far as getting, big games like this back to back. What kind of emphasis did you guys talk about in the bye week to come out and get this start so that you can stack days?
Yeah, it's so important because just like I said, this is the first game after the bye, and so for us to come out and play fast like we did after the bye is huge because we know that it can spark something, and we know that we can build off of this. And like I said, we just can't get satisfied. Can't get complacent. We just got to keep working and keep getting better.
What were things that you focused on with yourself to show up this week? Because I saw your spin move getting sharper and everything else.
Yeah, just studying the tackles I was going against a lot. The guys I was against and stuff like that, studying protection. And I feel like they had a definitive personality, even though when, some guys were in 7 and stuff like that. And so we kind of knew they kind of really helped in our film study to know when it's going to be passed and know when it's going to be run. So I think we played a efficient game today, not perfect, but we can always get better.
Alex, one of the stories earlier in the year was time of possession, you guys being on the field too long. I think you guys were plus 17 minutes in time of possession today. How important is that to have that complementary football what the offense was able to give to you running?
It's awesome. They did great today holding on to the ball, taking care of it, running the ball well. Jaylen and Najee had a heck of a game. And so KP being efficient with it as well. And so it's so important, because whenever we can, get that rest and stuff and go back out there, we're playing fast. And so I think they did a great job today. And so we just got to keep building on this.
Did you guys feel like because of that you were pretty fresh in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, no, it felt good. We were able to get off the field as well. Had some 3 and outs and stuff like that. So, when you do that, you'll be a successful defense. So we got to continue to do that.
And part of those 3 and outs getting off the field, as Alex Highsmith talked about, winning the early downs, which you saw them do. They didn't allow Alvin Kamara to get loose. And then you saw when it came to 3rd down, they were able to bring the pressure. And how many times have we talked about the complementary football of the pressure playing off the coverage and the coverage playing off the pressure? You getting pressure creates better plays for the secondary. Good coverage creates better plays for the guys trying to create pressure if they get stymied at first. And you saw them feeding off of each other in this game. Alex Highsmith getting 2 sacks, the Steelers the secondary getting 2 interceptions. They were all kind of feeding off each other in this game. And that's going to be key for this team moving forward, especially against a team like the Bengals who they got coming up this week. They wrecked them the first week with the way that they were getting after Joe Burrow, the way they were intercepting the ball. I'm not saying they're going to have 5 turnovers and 5 sacks, however many sacks they ended up in that game, but I am saying that this is still a defense that can get after the Bengals offense and take away what they're good at if they can stop the run. But a lot of this depends on guys working together. I think a developing dynamic duo on the defense too is Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi. We'll get to their grades in a little bit later in this show because we do still got to do our weekly grades. But the other dynamic duo I wanted to talk about was Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And I'm not saying they are one right now, but I'm saying in the future, the more and more I watch these guys, they can feed off each other because I think especially right now with the Steelers offensive line situation, there's going to be days where it's just going to be frustrating ramming your head into a wall. And I think Jaylen Warren experienced that early in this game when you saw he was just running into the same walls that Najee Harris run into most games while Najee Harris was getting, 5, 6, 7 yards a pop at times. But then as the game wore on, Jaylen Warren eventually, he came out a little bit. Najee Harris went in. Najee Harris got the concussion, he was tested for a concussion. He didn't have a concussion. And then Jaylen Warren came back in. And then later, Jaylen Warren was able to kind of regain what he was doing. And I think that pacing of things is going to work. And again, I liken it back to Maulet Moore and Willie Parker of the late 2000s, because what did they also have to deal with? A poor offensive line. I mean, that offensive line back then, I think they were better than this group right now, but still they were a not good group. I mean, there were the sayings after they won the 2008 Super Bowl with the San Antonio Holmes catch that the Steelers won with the worst offensive line to ever win a Super Bowl. And there's always been Roethlisberger saying, well, who's laughing now, offensive line? But seriously, that they found a way to work. But a big part of that, though, was there were days where Willie Parker wasn't getting going. And if you ever watch the old documentaries of that year, when Willie Parker once said, we're Pittsburgh Steelers, we built ourselves on running the football. And, Mike Tomlin had to say we've won 5 Lombardis, not 5 rushing titles, and that classic thing right there. But there was legitimate frustration from Willie Parker because he was a talented running back, a guy who could be a star in the league when he was given the chance, and the offensive line wasn't blocking well enough. But what helped him kind of regain it at times was Maulet Moore was able to come in, bring a change of pace, and then Willie Parker went back out there. And no one was saying Maulet Moore was better than Willie Parker. And I think that's where Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris can feed off each other. There's going to be time, I think, each other, they can build off each other. And what I also think is really cool is the camaraderie. Go back and look at in the fourth quarter when Jaylen Warren took the ball and he had that really good run where he hurled the guy and he extended the Steelers, one of the Steelers drive when they were grinding out the clock. And then go look at Najee Harris and him dapping each other up, hitting each other in the head and being like, let's go, we're doing this. And then Najee comes in and then he finishes the game. There was a real appreciation between each other. And I think that, as much as people will try to paint these guys versus each other and Jaylen's better than Najee and Najee's better than Jaylen. And listen, I think Najee is better than Jaylen, but I don't ever want to besmirch Jaylen's efforts. I think that dude is going to be a special contributor as a guy coming off the bench who's going to give you a hard time. And I think there's going to be a day when Najee's hurt. There's going to be a day when you need a backup running back. I think he could develop into the guy that can be that change of pace. I mean, heck, Jaylen Samuels once had a really impressive rushing performance for the Steelers. You need guys like that. And I think that those two together can be part of what's important about running the football. Josh Roundtree of 93.7 The Fan tweeted out a good quote from Pat Freiermuth saying, Pat Freiermuth saying, we need to run the football well. That's what this offense needs to do to get everything going. And they did in this game. And a big part of that, they were running Jaylen and Najee early. Najee was working. Jaylen wasn't. They kind of rode with Najee for a bit. Then late, they brought back Jaylen in, and then he was running the football well. And then Najee was running the football well. And then the Saints didn't know what to do. And again, the Saints ain't going to be every defense because the Saints are not a good team. But there's a lot of not good teams coming up on this schedule. And I think that that's where the opportunity is for this Steelers offense to kind of feed on these guys. And Najee's a second-year player. Jaylen Warren's a rookie. You can build with these guys. You can grow with them over the next 4 or 5 years and let them build. And then as you're doing this, one of the biggest concerns going into the season was, would the Steelers overuse Najee Harris? There's a way to not overuse him now because you have Jaylen Warren out there. And there's a way that you can kind of build them, again, build off of each other, because it's important to have hot hands. Not that Pitt football is the pinnacle of how all football is supposed to work, but one of the things I think that has worked for Pitt football is they ride hot hands in their backfield with their running back situation. And Israel Abanikanda, when he's not going, they put in Rodney Hammond. When Rodney Hammond's not going, they put in Israel Abanikanda. When they, and they've been able to work with that, and it's allowed them to change pace. I think the Steelers need to operate in a similar way with their run game right now, and still lead with Najee Harris. And I think the pace of how Sunday worked was a good pace. I think Najee Harris had 20 carries. Jaylen Warren had 9. And there's going to be days that changes a little bit. But I do think that there's merits to that, and building a dynamic duo, just like this defense is building their own set of dynamic duos. We're going to talk about more people that were really good contributors in this game with my official grades, stars, and skulls coming up in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our friends again at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks, as y'all know, is one of the easiest and most fun ways to play daily fantasy games, because if you're into fantasy sports and you have your fix on certain players that you have going on the weekend, you want to kind of parlay everything. Prize Picks is one of the easiest ways to do that, because how you play Prize Picks is you pick 2 to 5 players, and if you have a beat on how they're going to do, all you have to do is look at Prize Picks, and for each player, Prize Picks has a more or less bet that you can make, and all you got to do is say, oh, okay, I think Kenny Pickett is going to score more than half a touchdown in this game. And if you had bet that, if you bet more, you would have won that. And all Prize Picks is doing is saying, hey, bet more or less. You're not competing against millions of others. It's not trying to string together the best lineup in football like a lot of daily fantasy games. It's just saying more or less for up to 2 to 5 players. And you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against others. You're just playing against the house. Prize Picks also includes the NBA, NHL, college sports, and so much more. Download the Prize Picks app today, or go to prizepicks.com and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Again, that's a 100% instant deposit match with promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON, Locked On at prizepicks.com, or by downloading the Prize Picks app. We're also brought to you by Simply Safe. Simply Safe is the place that's here to bring you the ultimate experience in home safety, because what Simply Safe does is they're here to make sure that your home is as safe as possible and you're aware at all times. What I can tell you about Simply Safe is that their staff is there to help you at all times. They're attentive. When you talk to them, you feel like they're paying attention, and they help you get all the answers to the questions that you're asking, or even if you're in a rough spot, they'll help you figure out the situation that you're in. I really love how the Simply Safe phone app works, because when you go to it, it makes it easy to keep up to date with the safety of your home, the cameras that they've set up. Also, it makes it easy to get answers when you have questions to Simply Safe staff, who are available 24/7. And that's 24/7 professional monitoring, where the Simply Safe agents will call you the moment a threat is detected, and they'll dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or you can't be reached. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and outside your home. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL. Save 20% on Simply Safe security systems when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month for free. Visit simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more, because there's no safe like Simply Safe. And here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, if we read back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling. So let's get right to the grades. All right. So as you know, for those people who are new to the show, but those people who aren't, bear with me. We have our grades rubric. We don't do A, B, C, D, E, F, none of that stuff. We got our stars and our skulls, baby. We keep it just like football. Stars are good, skulls are bad. 3 stars, elite performance. 2 stars, great play with a good day means like, hey, you had a really significant play that was really awesome, and you had a good day to go along with it. 1 star means you had a good play and a decent day. Like, you had your good moment and you didn't really have a really bad moment with it, or you had a couple good moments and that overcame one bad moment that you had. Skulls, same thing in the reverse way. 1 skull means you had a bad play, not a terrible game, but like a bad moment that really cost the team and you never got a chance to redeem yourself. 2 skulls means you had a bad game as a whole and really cost the team. 3 skulls is all-time terrible. So that being said, let's get to our grades. We're going to start with the skulls. And I went back and forth with some of these grades because there were some guys here I thought about giving 2 skulls, but the more I watched the tape, there were certain things that I was able to say, this wasn't as bad as I thought in the game. So starting off with the skulls, we're going with Chukwuma Okorafor and Kevin Dotson. I realized I put Chukwuma Okorafor twice on here. That's my fault for doing that. But just looking back at the guys of the offensive linemen who made the biggest mistakes in the game, Okorafor gave up a sack, Dotson gave up a sack. One thing that I learned from talking to my buddy Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and he talked to Kevin Dotson. Kevin Dotson apparently is dealing with some sort of like hip flexor injury that's also impacting his ab. So his core hasn't been right, and he hasn't been his most athletic. And when I was watching the tape, it made sense because I'm like, whoa, that seemed awkward the way that he approached that. That's not the same aggressive self. And I think that he's having a problem in pass protection because the thing is when it came to run blocking, he looked fine. Like him and Dan Moore were actually performing very well in run blocking. So I thought that was kind of interesting there. But Kevin Dotson, I think there's times he's getting out of sorts in pass protection, and he needs to fix himself. But again, the run blocking was saving it from 2 skulls. I gave it a 1 skull. Chukwuma Okorafor, same thing though. I think he didn't do as well in pass protection as I thought he did initially. And then when I looked at the run blocking, he didn't contribute as much. And I felt like his pass protection wasn't as bad as Kevin Dotson, but his run blocking wasn't as good as Kevin Dotson, which is why he also got 1 skull. Going to special teams, both the special teamers got 1 skull. Matthew Wright and Presley Harvin, both of them struggled in this game. Matthew Wright missing 2 field goals. Harvin, I think he averaged 41 yards per punt. The more and more I see of Presley Harvin, and listen, I was a big proponent of Presley Harvin getting a grace period in the NFL because of what he went through in his rookie season, and he was a rookie punter, and give him time to figure it out. But man, you got to start booming some punts, man. I saw this guy boom punts at Georgia Tech. He needs to start doing it in the NFL. He hasn't yet. Whatever it is, he needs to start being consistent. Last guys here, Robert Spillane and Connor Hayward. And when I look back, Robert Spillane was not as bad as I thought, but there were just times Andy Dalton's just going after him in coverage. And Robert Spillane, I will say, in the run game, he was very important. He had 6 tackles in this game. He was able to contribute there. But man, in coverage, I mean, there was a few plays. I was sitting next to my buddy Raymond Porter of Urban Radio here in Pittsburgh, but like we were sitting there, and like as soon as Alvin Kamara motioned to the slot, I was like, they're going right to him because Robert Spillane's on him. And sure enough, he went there. Now, fortunately, on that play for the Steelers, TJ Watt got in the way and in the pass kind of sailed on Andy Dalton. But I think it was actually Taysom Hill on that play. But there were plenty of times, especially on the 1 touchdown the drive they had, when they was in trouble, they went after Robert Spillane. And the Steelers have to plan around that in the future, and they know that teams are going to start targeting him more and more. And not start, they've been doing it. But I will say this, Miles Jack was hurt in this game or didn't play in this game. So there's merit to it, to Robert Spillane having to be out there. And I think that, again, if Minkah Fitzpatrick was healthy, DeMonte Casey and Terrell Edmonds would have been able to be around the field more. And I think that one of them being on the field along with Miles Jack takes Robert Spillane out of a lot of those just situations. Last guy though, Connor Hayward. This isn't to hate on Connor Hayward, but I just noticed some plays where he wasn't blocking well, and he didn't have the really important receptions that I think Pat Freiermuth did to kind of neutralize that out. That's why I gave him 1 skull. Nothing terrible, but I think that Connor Hayward has to at least block well. He's not good enough to not block well, if you get my meanings there. So there are those 1 skull guys. Now let's go to the 1-star guys here in week 10, because they are this is a long list of guys, because there was only one guy that got 3 stars. We'll get to them in the third segment here on the show, along with the 2-star guys. But there's a long list of 1-star guys, because a lot of guys were playing their roles, doing their parts, not trying to be superstars, but filling their roles very well. Larry Ogunjobi, I felt that he was back and looked really good after the bye. They got to find a way to keep that guy healthy, because when he and Cam Hayward are working together, they are a dangerous pair up the middle and a big part of stopping the run. I thought Cam Sutton did a solid job in coverage in this game. When I looked back and I was looking back at more of the stuff that he was doing, I felt like he was sticking to his man. He drew an offensive pass interference because he was smothering his guys so much. I thought that was actually pretty good on his part. I know he didn't get a good PFF grade or nothing like that, but when I was looking at how just how the game shaped out, I look back at it, I'm like, I don't really blame him for much of the stuff that went down with the defense in this game. And officially, he was targeted 6 times, gave up 3 catches for 39 yards. If you get picked on for 39 yards in a game, I ain't going to complain too much. So good stuff on Cam Sutton. Now, let's go to the offensive line here because I list 3 of these guys in back-to-back with 1 stars. Dan Moore, Mason Cole, James Daniels. Now, there were some plays when Dan Moore in pass protection looked rough. Like, he was like, he was out of sorts. But in the run blocking, that guy was getting upfield a little bit. And this is where I think, my buddy Alan Saunders over at Pittsburgh Sports Now, he said this before. He feels like Dan Moore would be a great guard, or not a great guard, but he said he'd be a much better guard than he is a tackle because he could be aggressive and not worry about trying to be that left tackle who has to be the last line of defense on protecting the quarterback's blind side. And the more I see Dan Moore get downhill and block it and run blocking, the more I agree. And he was kind of a big part of what helped Najee Harris get going there at times. But you could tell still the one side of the offensive line that's struggling the most is the left side. But I gave Dan Moore a star because I felt like his run blocking was good enough to overcome the mistakes he made in pass protection. The other guys, though, Mason Cole, James Daniels, felt like both of them had better games this week. Not dominant, but good. And Mason Cole, I felt like there were times you saw him manage the situation. There were times James Daniels looked like the right guard that they went and got in free agency. You need to see more from those guys. Consistency will be important. If they can do it against the Bengals, I think it's a very good sign that the offensive line is taking actual steps forward, and that wasn't just a fluke. Derek Watson, because he was on the field for just a couple of plays and got two short conversions. I think it was 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, important ones. Good job there. George Pickens, because he had the touchdown, he had the reverse sweep, he had some nice tough catches. Liked what I was seeing out of him. I included Robert Spillane on this list too from last week. Forgot to take him out. That's my fault. Montravius Adams, he was only in for like a few plays in this game, but I felt like I saw him finally making a difference, which is good because I'd give him some struggling grades earlier this year. Terrell Edmonds, who I think he was targeted once in this game. No, actually, I just checked it. No, on PFF, he wasn't even targeted in this game. He only made like a couple tackles or a tackle in this game, but you could tell he was all over the place. The Saints wanted to go to Taysom Hill. They wanted to go to Juwan Johnson. When he was there, they weren't doing it. Terrell Edmonds deserved a star. Also a star to Jaylen Warren here. Early on, he was struggling, but again, I didn't blame that much on Jaylen Warren. I just felt like, the holes weren't there when he was running the ball sometimes. It just happens. But then late in the game, when the holes started to spring open, he started to take him, just like Najee started to take him. If Jaylen Warren had a few more carries to bust up some runs the way Najee Harris did, he'd have 2 stars on this list, but he has 1 star. TJ Watt gets a star, not 2 stars, because he didn't really wreck the game in any way, but you saw his presence added to the defense, and that's what you want from him. He gets a star from this performance. Arthur Maulet also gets a star for his performance because he had that really nice breakup on an important 3rd down deep ball. I caught up with him after the game in the locker room too, just talking about him, that play, and what this secondary is putting together. Here's Arthur Maulet from the Steelers locker room.
Arthur, saw a huge breakup for you down the field. We're fighting through the hands. It was one of the bigger plays. What do you felt put together the secondary's big day that you guys had?
When we're in warm-ups, Cam Sutton had us in the circle, and we had some tough breaks during the season, but today, after the bye, we kind of looked at the film, saw the explosive plays we were giving up. We just had to be more aggressive at the catch point, playing the ball, even if the guys have it, finishing it to the ground, whatever the case may be, So, just taking ownership on not giving up deep balls, playing through the whistle, and making the plays that we need to make.
Were there adjustments or things you guys did differently in practice to help with that, or was it just like a hey?
Not just the want to, just the want to, taking ownership. We preach in the secondary. The team is as good as us. So we're playing bad, we're gonna look pretty bad. We're playing good, we're gonna look good. So we just got to keep stacking the days, keep stacking the practices, and getting better every week.
You guys get 2 interceptions, limit the other team to only a touchdown.
Exactly.
Impressive close in the 4th quarter. Is that the tone you guys need to set the rest of the season?
Yeah, that's the starting tone, man. Obviously we came off the bye and we looked at all the explosive plays we were giving up, and we can't have that if we want to play winning defense and have winning game, playing winning football, right? So like I said, man, we're just taking ownership, making those plays down the field, and we'll be good.
Arthur, you've been the energy guy. Like when this team was losing, you were like, guys, we can't be like this right now. Now you've seen them get a win coming out of the bye. How have you seen this team respond to adversity?
Honestly, it's just one game, right? You know what I'm saying? We got a long road ahead of us. We got 8 or 9 more games. I can't count right now. Obviously it's 1 week at a time. But, if we could just keep stacking days at practice, getting better every day, holding each other accountable when no one gets mad, we'll be fine. We still have a chance to go to the playoffs, and that's what everybody's thinking. You know what I'm saying? We're not here tanking, trying to, season over. No, we're trying to go to the playoffs, but we have to do that one day at a time, week at a time, win at a time. So, all right, thanks.
Don't you like that guy? The way I was trying to see, like, what do you say? Like, how do you like respond to adversity? See if he'd give a canned answer as far as like, oh yeah, they respond to adversity. No, he's like, yeah, it was one game though. We got to keep it going. That guy's focused. Even though Arthur Maulet, he's not a superstar, he's not the guy that's making all the plays. He's out there working. And the one time that he was challenged in that game on a deep ball, he came up big with a huge breakup to get to force a punt. I thought he played well and stuck with it. A good sign. And also important to say that, him pointing out that Cam Sutton, who also was on this one star list, was a big part of focusing on, hey, we need to finish plays, because they hadn't finished plays. And the secondary, he's right. They gave up deep balls. The two games that they were giving up the deep balls on, they allowed the big scores. Those are the games that got away from them in the Eagles and the Bills. There were games they could have won, like the Dolphins and the Jets, had they come down with those interceptions. I think they know that. And in this game, they came down with two huge interceptions. Those were ultimately big difference makers in a 10-point win. Moving down the list, Deontay Johnson came down with a deep ball catch. I thought that was important. I also put Derek Watt on this list twice because I was emphasizing on guys. But Kenny Pickett is my last guy on the one-star list, not because Kenny Pickett was overly great in this game, but 18 of 30, 199 passing yards, no touchdown passes. Those aren't the numbers, but he didn't throw an interception. He he managed the game when he had to. He didn't make the dumb mistake, and there were plenty of times he threw away passes, and I think that was all part of the Steelers' plan. He still needs to see the field better. He still needs to take what's there more consistently. But I felt like his 8 rushes for 51 yards, also the QB sneak to get in the end zone. He did enough in this game, and he deserves credit for that. That's why I give him the 1-star rating, as far as a boost there, because I do think that he earned that in this game. We still got 3 stars to give out and 2 stars to give out. We'll do that here in a minute on the Locked On Steelers podcast, so don't go anywhere. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our friends over at Built Bar. Now, with today's episode being brought to you by Built Bar, you've heard me talk about a lot of different types of Built Bars, and now they're getting even more. And when you look at these different new flavors, they got flavors like cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper, white chocolate peppermint granola. It's Built Bar's take on the granola bar, and it's so much more filling and so insanely tasty. And they have the candy cane brownie puff. It's ridiculous how many flavors they're coming out with here. Built Puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. If you haven't tried Built Puffs, you're missing out. They're basically chocolate covered, fluffy marshmallows with a bunch of flavors in them. It's awesome. And again, try out those Built Puffs, but also all Built Bars. They're the best tasting protein bars ever built. They're revolutionizing nutrition because we all know that they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They pack 17 grams of protein, and shockingly, they're low in sugar and calories with only 130 calories. Just sink your teeth into that first bite, and it'll change your life forever. I'm not kidding. There will be a time before that you tried new Built flavors. And when you go and check out all these different flavors, you go to built.com and you can find all of them. Get a mix box or get a box of just your favorite flavor delivered right to your house. Again, go to built.com and you can get 15% off your order right now by using the promo code locked on 15. That's LOCKEDON 15 at built.com to get all your favorite flavors of Built Bars delivered right to your door. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, finishing up our Week 10 grades in the win over the New Orleans Saints. Also, how about the Eagles losing to the Washington Commanders? Didn't see that coming. I thought the Eagles would drop one eventually. Didn't think that would be it. But hey, NFL's a crazy place, man. It's where upsets are going to happen. Now, let's go to our 2 stars, and then we'll get to our 3 stars. And I'll explain my 3-star because there's one person who's on the 3-star. And people, I bet you can't guess who it is. And if you guess who it is, pause the video, think about it, and come back to me. But we're going with our two stars first. Going with DeMonte KZ. At first, I was a little harsh on the penalty because live I thought that he came in too high. And I still say he came in too high. But I want to indicate this. I am not angry with DeMonte KZ. Like, I don't think people should be angry. It's just hey, that was just the game is fast. When you're playing defense, you got to try to make the play to knock the ball out on the play that he was called for unnecessary roughness when he had the high hit on I think it was Chris Olave deep down the field. But he wasn't headhunting. And I think there's a difference between illegal and dirty. And again, when I looked at that play and I saw them and how that it was playing. Damontae KZ wasn't going in there to hurt anybody. All he was trying to do was make a play on the ball. That's where Minkah Fitzpatrick normally finds a way to kind of make a play on the ball and be aggressive while avoiding the penalty, or at least avoiding to give the legitimate cause for a penalty. And I see where Steelers fans were saying, like, look, he led with his shoulder. His shoulder made the first contact to his shoulder, but also still the head made contact to the other head, and it had to be called because they're trying to protect players in this game. It doesn't make Damontae KZ dirty, there were some people out there saying, oh, he's a headhunter, blah, blah, blah. That ain't the case in that one. He was just trying to make a play. The game is really fast. That kind of stuff is going to happen. But when I looked at it, he was never thrown at otherwise, according to PFF. And then I was looking at it like, yeah, the one time that he was around the ball after that, he got an interception. So being a deep safety to take away those deep shots on most plays, good for him. He gets 2 stars because that was a huge pro, and especially stepping up in the last second. They didn't know that Minkah Fitzpatrick wouldn't be playing until like 5 p.m. the day before the game. That's good stepping up on his part. Cam Hayward, because Cam Hayward is Cam Hayward. When I was looking back at the film, like, I knew he was good because I just kind of expect him to be. But then when I just keep looking at on a lot of those run defense plays where he's just getting after it, he's just getting under the pile, he's moving the pile, he's creating opportunities for others. That's who Cam Hayward is. He gets 2 stars in this game. Alex Highsmith, man, again, I'm emphasizing this. I know I talked about this in the dynamic duo part when I was talking about this, but he had spin moves. He had different moves. He was confusing his guys. He was creating pressure, even when he didn't get home. I really felt that Alex Highsmith, it continues to really show up in his game. He's progressing as a player. He's becoming a guy that I think the Steelers are loving to have around. And, man, him and TJ Watt, we all thought, with Bud Dupree gone, that, like, man, that was the dynamic duo. The Steelers needed to keep those 2 guys together. Now Alex Highsmith is looking at the guy that everyone wants to keep around, because when TJ Watt's on the field, he's going to eat because no one can double team him. And eventually TJ Watt, is also going to eat. But really good showing from Alex Highsmith there. Najee Harris, because I thought he made some really tough runs. That really long run, I think it was 36 yards, where he busted loose, bounced off another guy deep downfield. 20 carries, 99 yards. Really good showing from him. Made some smart decisions, and even when the going got tough and the decisions, and it was tougher to make decisions, you saw him fighting forward. And even after he had his first fumble in a regular season game, by the way, that's insane that is his first fumble in a regular season game. He had over 400 touches, I believe, before fumbling in a regular season game, and he didn't even lose the fumble. It was a fumble, but he was able to come back out after that, make the runs, close the game out after Jaylen Warren had done some work late in the fourth quarter. Really good stuff from him. And the last guy, Levi Wallace. Now, I want to say that I did misspeak when I said that Levi Wallace tipped the pass that Damontae KZ intercepted. He didn't tip it, but he was so close in his coverage that he forced the passing window to be a bit inside on the throw that Damontae KZ intercepted. And that's kind of, I think that did play into the factor of so Levi Wallace didn't get his hand on that ball, but he did make a play there. And I felt like that was actually pretty important to what the Steelers needed in that situation. But then his interception was just phenomenal. When you go back and you look at just how he had to go up and snatch it with one hand, pulling it away from his man on the deep ball. And that was the interception that I think put the game away. I mean, the offense put the game away too, but that was the interception that was like, yeah, they're not coming back. Don't matter. The offense would have to have a complete utter collapse, and then we would have to have a complete utter collapse for them to even have a chance to get an onside kick to come back into this game, and that just wasn't happening. So all in all, really felt like he had a good game. He also had a really nice breakup on a deep pass over the middle. Pro Football Focus had him at allowing 4 catches on 8 targets for about 50 yards. I'll take that for my cornerback on most days, especially when he gets that. He also had 5 tackles in the game. Solid job by Levi Wallace. So there are your 2-star guys. Now, that being said, I said, could you guess who's the 3-star guys? And I want to say this before, because I forget who it was on Twitter, because someone called me out. They said, Chris, you're not a good evaluator if you're not giving this person your props. And I guess it's not a person who I'm giving the props, because our 3-star contributor for the Steelers is the doggone Pigeons. People brought this up. They said, Chris, you're not giving the Pigeons enough, and you're probably sitting here thinking Chris is awesome. But I mean, look at these guys. Look at these guys. They got the W chains. They got the Steelers hats. They was out on the field. The Steelers are undefeated when the Pigeons show up at Acrisure Stadium. I can also tell you that last year for the ACC title run, they were huge for Pitt's season. Whenever they were out there, Pitt was winning games. It's crazy. I mean, look, this picture right here I got on YouTube of these guys, they're wearing gold chains. Gold chains make Kirk Cousins be a good quarterback. They got to be good for you. Anyways, I promised someone that I would give. I lost a bet. Basically, I was basically like, "Hey, I'll give credit to these doggone pigeons. Just leave me alone, please." So there you go. I hope people can leave me alone about the stupid pigeons there at Acrisure Stadium because they will be back. And by the way, it just happens because they just lay down grass seed, and that's just what happens at this time of the year when they're getting ready to migrate. They feed there. They're there all the time. It's just that people are starting to notice them more and more on television. But anyways, there are your grades. I hope you're happy with them. I hope people who was bugging me about the pigeons will leave me alone now. But anyways, thanks again for checking out the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I got a film study in Kalijah Kancey. Steelers fans, if you want a new interior pass rusher, a new defensive lineman that could be a game changer, Kalijah Kancey might be him. I have a film study that on his recent success. He had 3 sacks in his last game, and in talking to Pat Narduzzi, the head coach, about him, I think there's going to be some things that you're going to see there. Go to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, check out my film review of Kalijah Kancey there and what he might contribute there. But also check out the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more on your Pittsburgh Steelers right here on the show that you can find on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button of the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel for more daily content on your Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see you tomorrow.